When Kawasaki revealed to me the bike that they were giving me to do the Philippine loop on was a KLR 650, it just made sense. Here was a motorcycle I could fight for, a beloved old underdog, world-beating despite its shortcomings on paper. How many other motorcycles are still around that are essentially unchanged since the late 80s? I mean, even the Suzuki DR650 underwent an engine update in 1996. The KLR still uses that same engine, just with added quality of life improvements over the years. It finally got fuel injection in its last update in 2022 after a few years off the market. So even the price, it hasn't changed when you adjust for inflation. By longevity alone, you could argue that the KLR has beaten almost everybody. Today's neo-retro bikes look old and ride modern. But 40 years since its first release, the KLR has only changed the bare minimum to stay road legal and relevant. So it was with that spirit that I took on ownership of a brand new KLR 650. I wanted to help preach the gospel of Riemann that the donkey was the BS-free bike for authentic adventure. And I watched and rewatched all of Adam's and other YouTubers' videos with the KLR and took a lot of notes. And then, armed with that, I set off on a country-spanning journey to prove my thesis. Well, I'm back almost 7,000 kilometers later, and I have proven that I am not Adam Riemann. I'm Aaron Palabyab, and this is the Ride XP review of the mighty Kawasaki KLR 650. To be honest, I wasn't sure about reviewing this bike. My contract with Kawasaki has ended, but still part of me didn't want to review it unless I could rave about it after all of the research and reading up and inspiration I'd gathered. But I realized, with your help, that there's no better way to sell the KLR or any motorcycle than to be honest. By being upfront about what a bike is actually like, I can help it find its intended audience. And the worst thing I could do is to mislead you and leave you feeling shortchanged when you buy a certain bike. Which leads to my point. The KLR 650 has survived to this day, not because it's the best bike out there. Everybody knows that. It survived because it occupies a unique niche, one built over the years of stubbornly staying the same, appealing to a core audience who want what only the KLR provides. And that isn't performance, novelty, or these days even competitive value on paper. Instead, the KLR offers go-anywhere ability in a simple package, Japanese reliability, old bike character, and above all, the benefit of knowing exactly what you're going to get. Thanks to its longevity, pretty much everything there is to know about the KLR has been written about somewhere. I don't know if any other big bike can make such a claim. So for that reason, this review isn't going to be a detailed breakdown like my other reviews. The KLR specs as a whole cannot compete with any modern adventure bike. Don't believe me? Just check out this video by Big Rock Moto. But still, it doesn't matter because the KLR is literally all about the vibes. So instead, I'll give you my perspective as a 5'7" rider of average skill and strength, but above average desire to travel on a motorcycle. So you know how there are motorcycles that are just love at first ride, regardless of what they're like to own? For me, that was the Gen 2 Ducati Scrambler Full Throttle and the BMW F450 GS. And I guess that's the typical Eurobike experience. Awesome on the test ride, but possibly frustrating in ownership. I found my KLR 650 adventure to be the opposite. It was, honestly, too tall, too top-heavy, and really agricultural. What's worse, I just couldn't get on with the front end for some reason. I don't know, it could be that the front end was just heavy, as evidenced by the fact that this is the hardest bike to side stand turn that I've ever tried it on. Or it could have been the extra wide handlebars amplifying all my arm tension. Whatever the case, when I first got on the KLR, I felt like I'd forgotten how to ride. The front end just seemed to wander constantly. But don't get me wrong, I was undeterred. As I said in this video, I am determined now to stop blaming a bike for my shortcomings or inability to adjust to its qualities. And so, I'm happy to report that it only took me 4,000 kilometers to get used to the KLR. I soon realized that the KLR was broadly similar to my first big bike. I tell anyone who asks me, think of the KLR as a big, Japanese, Royal Enfield Himalayan 411. Similar tractor factor with low stress power delivery, similar short first gear going up to a distant second gear, and then only up to fifth gear. Similar reputation for being good on all roads and no roads. They are, to me, two of the clearest expressions of a riding philosophy of being unhurried, uncomplicated, and seated. The KLR is the archetype in the West, especially North America, while the Himalayan emerged from India to become a global cult favorite in recent years. As a result, they attract a similar community. Unpretentious adventurers who can't be bothered with spec sheet battles and dick measuring contests. They just want to ride. And for that reason, they also tend to be the least toxic communities in motorcycling. But there are clear differences between them. The KLR wins over the Himalayan in torque and reliability, first of all. But it also wins by leagues in refinement. Compared to the KLR, the Himalayan 411 feels clunky and cheap. And don't be offended by that, that's part of why we love the Himi, it's really just a fact. The KLR is really much nicer to interact with. The throttle, the clutch pull, the gearbox are all Kawasaki grade, smooth, solid, satisfying to use. It's all mechanical and yet every input to output feels consistent every time. But on the other hand, the old Himalayan offers a lower seat height, center of gravity, and price. In the Philippine market, those make the Himalayan the easy choice between them. If I had to do hard off-road on a Philippine highway legal adventure bike, I would choose the old Himi over the KLR every time. It is the most forgiving bike and it got me through a lot when I knew almost nothing. The KLR, because of its size, I didn't even test on hard off-road. Now you may ask, why didn't I get the lower S version? Because that's the right bike for you short Asian guys. Simple. I was getting the bike for free. So I figured it would be easier to subtract from the Adventure than to add to the S. The Adventure has the full-length suspension, fully padded seat, along with the panniers and driving lights. And I believed that I would be able to adjust to the height. And I did. I lowered the forks 15 millimeters and it was all fine. So anyway, let's talk about likes and dislikes. Starting with likes. Number one, it's comfortable. There's a reason that this is one of the world's iconic travel bikes. Dark in the Road calls it just 10% less comfortable than a Honda Africa Twin. The stock seat on the Adventure is plenty wide for me and the perfect firmness for my 70-odd kilo weight. I'm much more comfy on it than on the touring seat, which is an upgrade on the Himalayan 450. The legroom is generous for me and the suspension plush. It will eat everything you throw at it, provided you take it easy. Yes, it is vibey. It's a big single. But it's far less vibey than it could be. Zach of Revzilla called it a wonder of engineering for that reason. And if you ride it like I did at 80 to 90 kilometers per hour for entire days over weeks, it's not a problem. I also kept the stock rubber-mounted foot pegs to keep vibrations lower. The extra wide handlebar is also great for touring. Wind protection is excellent, probably the best in this class, including with these stock hand wind deflectors. All of that made a real difference in the cold. Number two, the aforementioned Japanese Kawasaki refinement. Out of all of my bikes, including my 2020 Yamaha XSR 700, the KLR's controls have the nicest feel and response. I already mentioned this earlier. The gearbox feels just right. There's just the right amount of thunk, which, say, the Himalayan 450 doesn't have. Neutral's easy to find. That's a Kawasaki thing. Everyone says the brakes on this bike aren't good, but I found that they always taught me when I needed them to. And the non-switchable ABS deserves a mention because it's really well calibrated, and even the best non-switchable off-road ABS according to Adam Riemann. I love how that ABS only kicks in after the tire slides just a little bit. You can actually hear it and feel it. That's in contrast to my XSR where the ABS is quite intrusive. All in all, the KLR does the basics right. And that matters when you're riding hundreds of kilometers a day for weeks. Next, it handles surprisingly well on the road. When I swapped with my riding buddy Toby to ride the Himalayan 450 again, I realized that the KLR turns in more quickly. So after I got used to it, I found I could have good fun in the twisties on the donkey. Next, it's a sleeper pick for a proper big bike. If you like having big bike presence at a budget, the KLR delivers. And I found that it commanded the corresponding attention and respect when I was traveling around the whole Philippines. Wherever I rode it, people took an interest in it and even thought it was pretty cool. Which goes to show that outside our echo chamber, the KLR can be seen as a thing of beauty even. And last but certainly not the least, peace of mind. I knew this bike could handle whatever I threw at it. I've seen it go around the world, I've seen Adam Riemann ride it like a two-stroke enduro, so there was no doubt in my mind that I would never find its limits. I mean, honestly, I even got T-boned by a helmetless camote on a small bike during my first ride out of the city on it. The bike didn't even have 1,000 kilometers on it yet. The only casualty on my end was a bent brake pedal, which I bent back. But as they say, you should have seen the other guy. His bike was wrecked. And he was, honestly, lucky to be alive, along with his 2 kids on the bike. Moreover, I knew how to deal with any problems because they're all written about somewhere online. Now let's move on to my dislikes. First and foremost, the size and top heaviness vis-a-vis the lack of power. When you ride something this size in 2026, you kind of expect to get extra power and features to justify the trade-off. But instead, what you get in exchange for the KLR being so big and heavy is that it is big and heavy. Basically, it is for better and for worse built like a tank. On that note, the gas tank is 23 liters and it needs it. More on that in a moment. All of this makes it a tough sell to riders in this market with our shorter inseams for its intended purpose of combining long-distance touring and off-road adventure. For lower SRP, you can buy a 450 MT or a Himalayan 450 among others, which offer more fun engines and better value, while also being lower and lighter. That said, I did find that the KLR feels only slightly heavier to push around than the Himalayan 450. The main difference for me wasn't the 10 kilos of wet weight, it was the higher center of gravity on the KLR. Next was honestly what bugged me the most after many days of riding, the fuel consumption. Even ridden with a light hand, the KLR was consuming 5 to 6.25 liters per 100 kilometers. That's only 16 to 20 kilometers per liter or 38 to 47 US miles per gallon. For comparison, my XSR 700 makes more than double the horsepower along with 14 Newton meters more torque, and that bike only uses 4 liters per 100 kilometers, getting around 59 US miles per gallon. During the Philippine loop, I was filling up my tank almost twice as often as my buddy on the Himalayan 450. He was using as little as 3 liters per 100 kilometers. And not only does it guzzle gas, it also chews through tires. At least the stock one. The OEM Dunlop rear tire was gone by 4,500 kilometers. Finished. And that shocked me on a bike this lacking in velocity. Hence, I had to make an unscheduled purchase of a 17-inch Pirelli Scorpion Rally STR in the middle of my Philippine loop. And last is just a nitpick, but the stock foot pegs aren't good for standing off-road. You can't remove the rubbers, and they're at an awkward position when you stand. Basically, it's hard to stay perched on them. In the end, I feel the same way about the KLR 650 as I do about the band Engine de Poitrine. I love what they represent, but I'm just not that into them. And I feel kind of bad about it, like I'm supposed to. Put another way, I am a firm believer in the philosophy of the KLR 650, in the Tao of the donkey, if you will. It's humble, sturdy, and tells you, stop overthinking, just go, it'll be fine. It's not pretending to be a weapon, nor asking you to be a hero the way a T7 or an 890 Adventure might. It simply is what it is, a proven tool that does its job day in, day out, since 1987. Quoting Dork in the Road again, it's transportation, not entertainment. And it's that very unassuming character that has made it a legend. It made its reputation before adventure riding became a social media trend. So the KLR isn't for posers. It's too down to earth, too immune from hype for performative adventuring. And I think that's why people like Adam Riemann love it so much. It brings with it a specific type of freedom. Freedom from the pressure to be better than anyone. Freedom from everything that gets in the way of genuine experience. But alas, all these inspiring words don't always translate to lived experience. For a rider of my lack of leg length and talent, owning a KLR could not live up to my lofty disquisitions. The truth is that the 450MT, the Himalayan 450, and Kawasaki's own KLE 500 offer more of what I need for less money with less size to deal with. The BMW 450GS offers exactly what I think I need, except being cheap. So, despite my best intentions, I can no longer ignore the elephant or donkey in the room. That this is the end of the road for me and the KLR. Thank you to Kawasaki Philippines for this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and I do hope it still helps fans of the bike to find it. But wait! Before you go, there is something that I must confess. Just like with angine de poitrine, persistent exposure eventually wears down your resistance. And after almost 7,000 happy kilometers, the KLR has grown on me. When I rode it immediately after my F450GS test ride, I thought, man, this is nice. I wish I'd been a good enough rider to keep it. In the end though, the KLR asks you to be true to yourself. And so, I already have its replacement, and it's not the 450GS. On the contrary, it's a downgrade. I wanted to get a KLX 230 Sherpa to stay with Team Green, but I couldn't find any. So I got an old bike that's pretty much the same for half the price. I mean, they don't even sell these anymore. A friend posted it, the price was right, the seat height was low, so I got it. So I am now the proud owner of a 12-year-old Japanese dual sport. That makes it goodbye and thank you to the donkey and hello to the mountain goat. With that, thanks for sticking with me and the KLR, and I still hope to see you on the next adventure. Peace.